Work session for the Woodville City Council, July the 9th at 5 p.m. We have a couple of items on the agenda, and we have two people ready to rock and roll there. 2A is discussion regarding FY25 budget preparations and budget assumptions for utility funds and the master fee schedule recommendations. Whichever one of you wants to go first.
All right, good evening, Mayor and Council. We're going to continue our conversation about the budget, the fiscal 25 budget. This is the second work session that we've had, and tonight we're going to cover the budget timeline, utility rates, the budget assumptions for the utility funds, utility debt service, and the recommendations for changes to the master fee schedule.
Oops. Whoa.
And we're done.
Yep.
Thank you very much. Best meeting ever.
Speed read.
My assistant.
Phoning a friend.
There you go.
All right, I'm going to try something else. Ready?
Oh, nice.
I'm going to touch the screen and stuff.
All right, so just wanted to point out there's a lot of preparation that goes into the budget before we get to June and July, but this timeline is reflecting the public-facing portion of the budget process. And so right now we're doing the workshops. In the end of July, we'll be getting the appraisal values so that we're able to calculate the final tax rates. August 1st, Council will get the proposed document. And August 13th, Council will be considering the proposed budget along with the tax rates. And in September, we would be reviewing and approving the document. So these are our fund types that we deal with in governmental. As far as the budget is concerned, in June, we covered the governmental side of it. Tonight, we'll be talking about the proprietary, or sometimes we call it the enterprise funds, our utility funds. So the enterprise funds consist of water and wastewater utility fund, solid waste fund, the utility capital fund, which was covered during the capital improvement plan process, so we won't be covering that tonight, and also the debt service that's related to the utility fund. So the water wastewater rates, I know that we had a full rate study last year. This year we went ahead and engaged a consultant to do an update. We will probably do that every year, especially with the large projects that we have going. We want to make sure and keep touching that rate model and making sure that our assumptions are continuing to be accurate. So we fed the consultant several things: updated units, growth projections, and also projection on annual debt payments. One of the things about the debt payments are that, especially with the WIFIA funding, we don't start accruing interest until we start drawing down those funds. So we were trying to be a little bit more strategic with how and when those funds would be drawn down to be able to work into this rate model. So only the retail rates were looked at as far as the update is concerned. Last year, total debt payments within the model was at $213 million. This model that we were working with this year had $271 because we have all of the debt that goes all the way through the 5-year CIP, which all of that was not included in the update last year. So we'll start with water rates forecasts. The way I laid this out was a comparison of what you were presented last year. And so I just want to point out we have a little bit more of a leveled off approach with the rates going higher than projected from last year in fiscal 28. And so it's a little bit smoother of a climb. I do want to point out that because we're going to continue to do these reviews every year, we do anticipate that we'll be able to hopefully control and come down on those outer years and those rate projections, but it's all going to be based on growth and when the debt is sold and the cost of the projects. Right now we're using a lot of assumptions in this rate model in order to project these rates. Obviously, there's a lot more rate sizes, so those all go up accordingly. But this is just the residential and the more commonly used size meters.
So I think I misunderstood you. I thought you said we looked at all the rates except for residential, but what you meant to, what I should have heard was we looked at only residential.
The retail rates, we did not update the wholesale rates.
Okay.
So the retail.
So
rates.
so residential, commercial, all would fall under a retail
are
rate.
in this, yep.
Okay. Making sure I understood that. Thank you. So what I'm seeing though, your projections, we're looking at the base fee going down next year?
It's not going down, it's just
'Cause
not
it's
going
going
Up, but not as much as.
It's
we
not
had
going
originally
up
projected.
as much as the model showed last year, and so we're doing a little bit more of a slope trajectory, not quite as steep as what was
So
presented last
what
year.
would cause your assumptions to come down? You said these are assumptions, right?
Yes, and so we were basically making sure that the revenue that the model was generating based on the projections and the growth projections and the debt was able to cover what it needed to. We needed to over recover each year to be able to cover our expenditures and our debt payments and also have the reserves that are required.
So, go ahead.
No, I mean.
What are the varying
he
factors?
literally, yeah.
What are the
Why?
varying factors, such as prediction of rain, number of new homes, the differences
It's-
between LEUs? Okay.
Yeah, it's the growth projections last year were pretty aggressive, and so we fed the model.
So you tweaked the model is basically what you're
Yes,
saying.
everything about what was entered last year got updated this year based on current information.
Do that
Okay.
every
So
year.
I guess that's the
Yes.
question I'm interested in. Everything that was entered last year was re-entered this year.
It
What
was
were-
updated based
was
on the
updated.
current.
Where were the significant deltas between what was entered last year and what was updated this year?
Some of it can just be the timing of when the debt's going to be issued. And so, I mean, I went through the whole CIP program and went through all of the debt and made sure that we were only bringing on that debt when we were expecting to sell it. And and so it was a combination of a lot of things.
Right.
So you said some of it, and obviously you piqued all of our attention on this issue. You said some of it could be attributed to that. What percentage?
It's okay if you don't.
Yeah,
Yeah,
well,
you don't know. I mean, it's
I'm
okay to say.
trying to explain. There's so many moving factors in the model because everything that you put in and the changes that you make to the model change what's being spit out. I think there was some assumptions made last year, and the projection was, we'll get to this point and we'll stay. And so, as you can see on the rates that were presented last year, they kind of go up and then they level off, whereas we're kind of taking it more of a slope angle. We'll still get to the same point. We're just going to take it a little bit slower in
Well,
these
we're actually
first couple of years.
we're getting beyond that same point, right? It was we're
In the
gonna
outer
go to a
years.
higher rate and stay there, but in 2028 our rates are actually higher than we were projecting
Yeah.
them to
In the
be
outer
2028.
years.
So, and the reason for that, so in your last 2 years, let me make sure this is right, 27, 28, when you start seeing that, especially 29, is that we know that we very seriously look at this every year. I'm not going to promise you 28 is going to be 67,
Right.
50, or 75. The growth model we used last year, I don't believe was super accurate for a number of houses. So we're fine tuning that, where we go and ask what's being platted, what's in the works, and trying to fine tune this number. I'm not going to make promises for 28, 29.
So let me ask this question because you've stated it. She alluded to it. The growth progress and the growth projection. So, correct me if I'm wrong here. From what I'm hearing, based on what Serena just said, is that the growth projection for the number of single-family dwellings and multifamilies has slowed to a point of what was previously projected, and
Correct.
consequently, this has an effect on what the water rates forecast is. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay.
So the other thing I'd add is to say it another way, because I had that my eyes were drawn to that too, where we're kind of going like this. towards the latter years is that it gets increasingly more conservative the further you get out because there's more unknown, and that could very well curve further down. What we don't want to do is project something under. We'd rather be pleasantly surprised. But so FY25 is going to be very, very dialed in. FY26 a little less so, and a little bit more as you go out. I think what we're seeing a lot of here too is the benefit of Tracy's expertise in dealing with utility rates and so forth, and really digging in and having that benefit of her time since she's been here to really, she spent a lot of time in this, and we don't want to over collect on our residents. That was important. And so trying to really get what is that true number that we have to get to cover our debt.
I think that all of us, we at least as long as I've been on the council, and I think before that. Now, actually, I think we made that switch on council, is that we want to be more realistic about our assessments. And I don't think anyone is going to be upset or concerned, saying, hey, listen, you're redirecting something because, hey, listen, we've got in more data. So consequently, we're looking at what's actually coming up with our formula. I'd be, at least personally myself, I'm more interested and surprised by the growth, the leveling off of the growth. And that's something that I'd like to see more information on, either in the weekly packet or something like that, and try to ascertain and see where we're at, see what was proposed, just position, was previously using that, how are we looking with our comparative cities with that, because that's interesting. And also honestly, a little bit that's concerning too as well. But I think that, just like you said, it's been an excellent job looking at our debt and saying, listen, okay, when are we really going to issue it? Because we have a certain guy in here who said for years, hey, listen, if we're going to do a project, we're going to do a project. So don't tell people, we're going to get on it and then it's going to be out in 2035 or something like that as well. But it is a pretty significant, based on the conversations we had last year regarding our water rates, this is a pretty significant, adjustment. And I also think, to be fair, for the public, something you've heard from us plenty of times is saying that we are concerned about our rates because we know with the growth we have to keep up with it. But honestly, middle America and a lot of folks are being affected economically. And so what can we do to go and help with that? So I think that's good to see that, hey, listen, we're having that conversation at least early on, because I do think the economy is going to pick back up, try tremendously toward those latter years. But right now, this is something that benefits the citizens.
So I don't know if I see the same significant adjustment that you see, but what I see is that we know what the total final amount of debt issuance is going to be. So those FY29 numbers are based on all the debt being issued. So that's a pretty established quantity. What I see is looking forward 2 years, 3 years, 4 years in terms of those debt issuance amounts. We don't have 100% when everything's going to be ready and roll out. But a year ahead, we know what next year is going to be. And so we see next year, we can dial in a lot tighter to it because now the parameters are becoming more clear. That crystal ball isn't going out so far. And so I'm very appreciative of staff taking the initiative to look at this again and probably look at it again next year as well. I appreciate that because the landscape, like you said, when we make predictions, we try to be conservative and make sure aggressive, however you want to put it. But we want to make sure we're prepared. If things go the worst possible route, that we've got the money so that the city's not broke. But as we get closer and closer to those end days, we can make more accurate predictions in terms of where we really are. How much debt did we issue this year, and dial it in. So I don't see a significant deviation. Other than those numbers are different because they flatlined it because they thought a lot of that debt might be issued sooner.
Sounds like we're aggressively agreeing.
I think that's. No, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I just had a clarifying question as well. Is the cost of water rising as well? Is it costing more?
And we're buying a lot more.
And it will every year.
We're processing a lot
That will
more.
continue to go up.
So, because these meetings are also for clarification so that the residents have a clear understanding of all the variables that are included in this, and water cost. And so my question is, will the price of water be changing? Is that included in here in some way?
this is really more built on, the model does use increases each year, even for the operating budget. So all of that is built into the model.
Yes.
So yes.
So what are we
Thank
spending
you.
for water on an annual basis?
The
purchase the-
purchasing straight out. I
Right.
think in the fiscal 25 budget, it's like 2.8 for purchasing.
2.8 million?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
But-
I would say that's a drop in the bucket, but literally it's,
so to speak. But
That's terrible.
what Brandon whispered to me is that rate from LCRA will be steadily increasing over the next 10 years.
As it should.
That-
I
thank
mean,
you.
it's just
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
so I have another editorial comment, which may be off in left field, but I'm thinking, okay, so we make these water rate adjustments and fees and so forth, and I know over the last year, we've gotten a lot of feedback from residents and saying, hey, my water rates are too high, I'm on a fixed
Agreed.
income, Social Security, blah, blah, blah. That's life, okay? We know that, all right? We know that we have this debt that we're forecasting into the future, and I remember hearing that debt into the $1 billion+ dollars. I mean, that's a huge amount of debt. I mean, that's not what we owe out the door today, but long term. And so as the city grows, and as it is growing, I guess my concern, and maybe you can address this in a way that I understand it better, is that if we have a more aggressive growth in multifamily dwellings versus single-family dwellings, it seems to me like the single-family dwellings carry a bigger burden of this debt than the single multifamily, because they're just paying rent or lease or whatever, and the landlord or whoever, the property owner, builds that water rate into their cost every month. So we're really not getting much from that.
Yeah.
So tell me how that helps us out.
Yeah, we had that discussion at length and talked about that. That equity piece is super important. It's really looking at the dwelling cost. What is a dwelling cost? What is that? How can we compare apples to apples? Because the way that it's structured is different. And so we are going through that process. It's not reflected in these numbers, and we would look to true that up. If there is a discernible difference, we would true that up. It's not reflected in these numbers
Well,
yet. It is
and
a
I guess-
conversation that we've
Yeah.
had.
And I
Absolutely.
understand, my concern is that we have seen and continue to see more multifamily dwellings pop up in our community. And we have said in the past, that's where we draw a larger amount of our ad valorem tax, which is great, but how's that impacting this?
Yeah, and it's a separate fund, right? Enterprise
Yeah.
side, and they need to pay the same. It needs to be equitable.
I think to the mayor's point, I mean, I think all of us have heard numerous times from people saying, well, if we don't have water, what are you building all these apartment complexes for? What are you doing? Well, I'm working for that as well. So to be able to articulate a message and information behind that to better form the narrative on that so people understand that is quite substantial because, we saw, I mean, we have quite amounts of multifamily being built around here as well. And I know that it's slowed down to an extent, but people are quick to look at that as to the reason why their water bill is higher than what it should be from that as well.
So the next several slides are really the same conversation, but they're just breaking down. So this is water rates, forecasts, same comparison, but this is the volumetric grades. You're going to see the same pattern, leveling off the increase and seeing that it's going over what we projected last year in the latter years. Same factors, same conversation. These are just the volumetric rates. One thing about the multifamily is that we did have the discussion that they do come in pretty much at the highest tier as soon as they start. They're using a much higher volume, so they are paying right off the bat at the higher tier. So the wastewater rates, hate to say ditto, but it is the same conversation. The rates increase more levelly, and we've kind of leveled them off. These are going up a little bit more in the outer years, so obviously we want to be mindful. The thing about looking at these rates every single year and continuing to adjust the assumptions is that we can also plan accordingly. So if there are reserves available that we can set aside and put towards debt, that helps those outer years. And so that's something that we will continue to look at every single year, every time we're balancing out the water and wastewater fund.
I really like.
So I'm curious. You mentioned on the water rates, the multifamily, right? They've got one big meter. They're sub-metering or otherwise allocating to the people who live there, and they're likely all going to be in that greater than 25,000 range. So they're going to be paying the highest rate for most of their water. But over there on the wastewater rates, do they only get charged one base rate?
Yes.
So whereas most of our single-family residential is paying $51 or eventually $95 a month in base wastewater rate, the 400 people that live at that apartment complex are only going to be paying one rate for all of them. Is that right?
And that's part of the conversation that James was referring to,
Okay.
is looking at that.
It's how we make that
Equity.
equitable.
Looking at the total bill and like, are we trying to figure out is it fair?
So these are just charts for total bill, just kind of seeing the trajectory compared to total bills that were presented last year. Just a visual that you can see it's sloping a little bit less than the projected bills last year, but then of course in the latter years they go up. This is for residential, and then the next slide is for the commercial.
You're just showing us the same information in various different formats.
Some people are visual learners,
Visually.
cater to all.
So this takes the two and combines them together.
This is your total
so this
bill.
Is, this is your total
I
bill.
mean, and I do. I mean, I think we all understood last year when we were like, hey, listen, okay, if you're going to, I always use the analogy with my kids at school. If we're gonna have parties for the whole year, get me at the beginning of the year and just make me pay. Don't keep coming back to me for more and more and more like that as well. But I like the thought process behind this. Like, hey, listen, let's do that slow growth to it and get to it. We're still get to the same end point, but ultimately, it helps gear people off of that.
So we did update the benchmarking slide. Keep in mind, several of these communities are built out, and they're not building large projects like we are underway right now.
Can you talk more about that so people can hear for the 7 people that watch? 8, sorry.
Just that, I mean, I know, like, I go to lunch with a lot of the finance directors in a lot of these different jurisdictions, and, you know, like Cedar Park, I asked him, are y'all built out? And he was like, we're pretty much built out. So if their plant is, or if their plants are serving them, they're not building the huge infrastructure projects that we're doing right now, anticipating for additional growth. And that's kind of where we are.
We still have half our citizens who aren't here yet.
Yes.
So in other words, they're going to pay later. We're paying now, but they're going to pay later.
At some point, the facility's got to be renewed.
Yeah, it all evens out. Yeah.
We're just on a different cycle.
They paid a while ago.
Yeah.
In different geographies, there's a lot of factors.
Yeah.
Some cities like us have to drill down, tens of, 90 meters or something to hit bedrock, whereas others are right there. There's a lot of factors.
And to be fair, I think we're kind of lucky because on our side of 35, we don't have to deal with some of the pooling of those resources that they have to do in Cedar Park and other noise areas. Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
So we move away from rates and we move on into the actual water and wastewater fund budget assumptions. This will seem kind of familiar to what you heard about the general fund. No new personnel added, the annual 3% increase on base compensation. We're looking at a 15% increase in our health insurance coverage. We talked about the cost allocation adjustment to the general fund. So the utility fund's allocation has been reduced slightly and will continue to be looked at for the next several years. City utility expense, so the utility fund will start billing the city accounts for water and wastewater use, and this will be recognized as revenue. So that's all been built into their fiscal 25 budget.
That 15% assumption, is that an assumption, or is that what our dealer, our brokers told us?
No, we're waiting on an RFP to come out in the summer. We should find out. We're on a calendar cycle instead of a fiscal cycle, so we don't actually find out the information until we've already committed to the budget. But based on what they're telling us, the 15% is a pretty good estimate.
And we're on calendar because of how healthcare, works, and the opt-in and everything else with that as well. So, yeah.
We still want to target a 35% reserve in the fund balance in the water wastewater fund. Same reasoning for why we target it for the general fund, because of the debt. So the assumptions, just wanted to kind of highlight some capital outlay.
Oh, Tracy, I did have one question. Can you go back 1 second on that slide? No
can't go
new
back.
personnel added, but that does include outstanding FTEs.
So the vacancy.
Are we sweeping, or
The vacancies, are you talking about
Yeah,
vacancies?
yeah.
So the vacancies would still be built into the budget. We're just not adding any new positions.
yeah? That's what I just wanted to be
Okay.
clear. If we're
Won't be an
sweeping
increase in
or
the authorized number of FTEs.
Gotcha. So capital outlay, last year the budget included about 3 million in this area. This year it's just a little over $1 million, and it's distributed out throughout the divisions. I would say there's some significant improvements being done at the central wastewater treatment plant. In Brandon's notes, it was like a 45-year-old plant that really only had a life of about 40 or 30. Some of these parts, so we're having to. The 349,000 in wastewater treatment has to do with some updates that need to happen at the central waste plant. The rest of the items are replacement of equipment and some. That's pretty much it. Parking. Any questions with that?
real parking, not gravel parking?
I believe so.
Don't you,
Yes.
friend?
A little bit of gravel parking, yeah, something like that. Sort of gravel.
We're on construction.
So the solid waste, same scenario as far as personnel. There's one FTE in that fund. The majority of this fund relates to the third party solid waste provider. They have put us on notice that they would be increasing their rates by 3.67%.
I'm sorry.
Uh-huh.
I mean, who said that?
So the Waste Connections, their contract allows for them to do a CPI increase each year.
And what's in their basis for that outside of the contract increase?
It's the CPI increase
Okay.
is what they submitted.
So it's not based on services being rendered or performance or anything
No.
else whatsoever. So if they
No.
were missing numerous times regarding trash pickup and issues, concerns, that can maybe take into consideration regarding negotiations.
I would say that would be part of, we will put an RFP on the street in 25 for a new contract. You start over a year in advance if you are to ever potentially change providers. So we start in 25 for a potential new contract.
Service level standards and penalties for not meeting those standards?
Yes. We're able to charge them any missed, yes.
So we already
And we-
charge back
We
based on.
submit those, yes.
Okay, and do we actually track that and actually charge back on those?
Yes.
We do.
And I give a lot of credit to Serena and staff on that. And so for the public, on days when you don't get your trash picked up, please continue to contact us about that. Thank you. I'll leave
Please,
it at that.
we need to know.
There's a nice feature on our website under report a problem.
Just click the
Push
button.
button if your trash wasn't collected, let us know.
Or call the mayor.
Or call.
I'm not gonna tell them to do that, but
867-5309.
Oh, yeah.
Oh yeah, we get calls all the time.
All right, so talking about the debt, this is just a graph that's just kind of showing the growth in the debt. And, obviously we have some very large, significant projects, so the debt's going to significantly increase over the next several years. Just want to reiterate the water plant and the wastewater plant are obviously two of those biggest projects. And then we move into the,
And we're still on
Fee
schedule for all
schedules.
of that completion.
I believe so.
So good evening.
Sort of.
Slightly. We've gone back through and we've looked at our fees, and for the most part, we're wanting to make sure that we are consistent with the other jurisdictions in our area. One of the items that I think we would want to highlight is our preliminary plan and final plats. We've gone back through and looked at those to make sure that we were relative to what our neighbors are doing. This is making the adjustment so that we provide a base fee that is more consistent with the surrounding neighbors, and then also continue to charge per lot.
Jeremy, that's 100% increase. So we were just that low as compared to our.
We were low, yeah. So when we went back and we looked at the other jurisdictions, we had a lower fee amount there.
Now, was that productive and helping to get people involved and interested in our city, or is that just something that really had a negligible effect one way or the other on how we were able to operate?
So that question, I don't have a great answer to that, but I would say that the lower the fee is, the more interest there might be in pursuing additional subdivisions or residential subdivisions in particular to come into the area. Making sure that we're more competitive and consistent with the other jurisdictions will ensure that we're on that level playing field.
Could you help me understand what exactly is a temporary noise permit for construction?
So that one is underneath our building department, and that would be at such time that they need to do, say, night work, or there's going to exceed that decibel level. This would be an increase, Currently, there's a noise permit of $50. This is an increase for the construction itself.
Irregardless of how long the construction takes.
There's a time period, that's
Is
associated.
it a per day? Is that a per week?
Yeah, it's a per occurrence.
But how do we
Okay,
define
so-
occurrence?
It's
Like a concrete pour
Yeah.
at night.
Yep. And so this would be an opportunity to ensure that we're watching those
When
and
we
to make
know
sure that
when it
we're,
is.
again,
Yeah.
competitive and trying to reduce maybe some of
Because we get
that
I know.
that nuisance that might occur as well.
Mhm. Yeah, I'm trying to understand why we would be willing to permit nuisances.
There are certain times where it's a necessity for development as they're doing the pouring of the concrete to make sure the temperatures may be there, and also it's just the productivity of that building.
I think the perfect example is I was coming home last week, and they were repaving Seal Road. They were doing that in the middle of drive time. Yes, over here as well. Normally, whenever you have your construction plans, whatever entity, you try to avoid those times. But consequently, something like that occurred from there. You pay your fee, you go for that as well, and you work for that. It's beneficial, but at the same time, it's penal because you want to make sure. And I'm hoping $100 occurrence is penal.
Well, and that's the thing. I want to make
Yeah,
sure that
as well.
it is that we have
I don't
some ability to control and influence that. I mean, frankly, if someone just needs to, wants to do some construction off hours and it's going to have a huge impact on a neighborhood, then I wouldn't want to permit it at all. But if it's something where it's further out, if it's a larger lot, if it's road paving away from a neighborhood, then that makes sense. Do we have some flexibility on whether or not we issue that permit for $100 for a noise excessive?
So the building official is able to make different calls on certain things. What are you thinking?
I just want to make sure we're not allowing, a developer to buy the right to annoy and frustrate our citizens.
So he's looking from the other standpoint. That's saying, hey, wait a minute, I want to keep doing this. Here's $100.
No, you don't. You don't get to start construction at 5 o'clock every morning and wake up the neighbors.
Yeah.
Just because you paid $100 to get a 2-hour head start or whatever.
So it's good to know that he has a discretion of whether a yay or nay on whether or not they'll happen.
Well, what's the fine if they start 2 hours early?
$2 billion.
What's a penalty?
That's a good question.
Yeah, I don't have the penalties.
But there is a penalty, right?
I believe that's probably a $200 type of per day.
It'd be a citation.
Per minute?
Yeah, it's a citation that would be. But I don't have that.
We'll find out.
Yep.
It won't be more than 200 a day.
Okay. Good.
So this one again, looking just at our fees and making sure that we're being competitive. Site development permits are something that we typically go through, making sure that we're getting the fees that are needed to be able to do the reviews. The last one is tree removal only. There's certain times where we're doing site disturbance permits, and somebody may be just looking to remove a tree. This is not associated with a single-family residential, but more of commercial type of development. This is to increase that as well.
Talk to me more about site development and extension. That is a crazy increase. So
the idea is that when they get permitted, that they continue and move forward in their applications and are expedient and move forward on their projects. And so in the event that we need to get into a delay and, we just need an additional extension or something to that effect.
Oh, so that's not an extension of the development site itself. That's an extension of, dude, I need more time.
Right.
Okay.
And is that related to vested rights?
No.
Does that allow them, paying that fee doesn't allow them to vest for longer?
Did we have a conversation about this a couple of years ago?
Yeah.
And just in case y'all, planning and zoning did see all these, just to let you know, we did vet it through that board. And if I may just add, when the way we look at fees, and want to make sure the policymakers look at that too, is that the residents of Pflugerville shouldn't be paying for the development side. They should depend on developers to bring forward carry their own. So just the philosophy, and if that's different to y'all, we would want to know that. But that may be why you see some of those increases, and we did compare to other cities.
Correct.
Have we just my own edification, just either way, tell me that. Have we just not looked before?
Sure we have.
Yeah, no, we do, we do make those comparisons, but this was one of those situations where there were certain things that were highlighted as they needed to be adjusted.
Because, it looks like 100% increase, 100% increase. 100%.
Are there other things where we're below average? I mean, you're only showing us the increases, right?
Please say that.
We're showing,
please
right,
say
these are where the adjustments have been made.
But are there others where, compared to neighboring cities, we're already over what other neighboring cities charge?
There may be some.
We're not adjusting anything down at this point.
We're
They
not
can catch up
reducing.
on those, and we'll catch up on these.
We'll get you next
Not
week.
reducing fees, but looking to be more competitive with our neighbors.
Something Serena
And
just said,
other
too.
cities have increased recent too. So we look at fees every year.
That makes more sense.
And I do want to make sure that our fees are, commensurate with the work involved. I am a little concerned there about the site development extension fee, only because, if they're just taking a little longer, are we charging them in order to penalize them for not getting something done, or are we actually incurring costs related to the extension of time associated with the project?
Or is that becoming a blight on the city by having a project that's languishes for an extended period of time?
Yes.
And I think that's the one.
Yeah,
That's the one that we've seen a couple times.
That it?
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Pause, speak.
Have Terry speak to these. Not a lot of changes in policy.
Oh, we did that.
For this one specifically, when you see dangerous dog boarding, this is a new fee that we're looking to add because the standard board for an animal in our care is $10 a day. Well, a dog that's on quarantine and a dog that's deemed to be dangerous obviously takes more trained staff, a little bit more work. Our volunteers can't just go tend to this animal. It takes more expertise and care to care for them. So our recommendation is to add a dangerous dog boarding fee, specifically when we have them waiting for court and those types of things. There's also times that they remain in pause care for an extended period of time while they come into compliance. And so looking at this at $20 per day, in line with our quarantine rates. And then specifically here on deceased pet services, this is referring to someone's pet who has died. And previously, for $60, someone could bring the animal to the shelter and we would dispose of it. And for an additional $25, we'd come get it from you. But we really see this as an owner responsibility at end of life care for your pet that could be taken care of by the veterinarian community. We will still come pick up if there's a domestic animal in the street or something of that nature where an animal is deceased in a park near a school or in a roadway. We would certainly come out and take care of it. But this is beyond a service that we see other cities in the area, Central Texas, really providing. It is very time consuming to do so. And as we said, a responsibility of the pet owner at time of passing.
So I guess going back to what Doug was talking about, okay, so I get that it's a more laborious to do, maybe you charge more for that, but I also think that's just because some people aren't doing it doesn't necessarily mean a reason why we shouldn't do it. I get the laborious, you're saying it's more laborious.
Yeah,
but,
we definitely, that extra fee would not cover the time and the materials to take care of that service. But if I may ask, how many of these events have we covered? How many times do we take care of deceased pets?
Yeah.
It's not something that we heavily advertise, so fortunately it is not something that we see as frequently, but it certainly is emotional for our staff when working with residents in this type of situation as well. And so at this time, we refer them to the different veterinary services that could be available for them with their animal. We're not providing the animal back for them to have afterwards. We're not doing any of those extra type of end-of-life care services that someone might want for a deceased pet.
So,
It doesn't seem like a valuable service for us to provide.
well, we don't know how often we're doing it. It sounds like the fee that's currently being charged is inadequate to cover
Definitely.
the cost. What about the alternative of simply increasing the fee? If we doubled the fee, would that cover our costs?
Yeah, and I'm telling you, I just everything changes after you have a pet, right? Now I'm aware. I'm like, and it doesn't sound like it's something that's been abused either with it, but it sounds like something that whatever we were charging was quite low as compared to just like
It's 3 to 5 a year.
3 to 5 a
Currently
year.
about 3 to
We
5
just
a year.
believe the private sector is better equipped
Well,
to go into homes.
let me comment on that. It's because when you have a pet, it's not a pet, it's your family.
Yeah.
So you're not going to call somebody to take your family member down to the animal shelter and have them cremated. You'll do a more personal type of service with a veterinarian, is my feeling. That's what we plan to do.
Well, Mr. Mayor, I certainly agree that I and
Pet lovers,
one
Really?
size does not fit all. People have different levels of emotional attachment to their pets.
a very high attachment.
I
to their
assume
pets.
that this is something that was put in place, 30, 40 years ago when we were an agricultural
Probably.
community. Is that
No.
correct, Mr. Mayor?
Back then, you took them out in the field.
What do you mean back then?
Okay, so at some point,
40 years ago.
at some point it changed.
I'm sorry, David, I don't mean to be debating with you, but
I'm trying to figure out where this came from, why we do something different, and is there a, you know, if this is something that we are providing a service once a year, you remove the service. If this is something we're doing 100 times a year, maybe we need to increase the fee. So it seems to me like there's
I think she said 5.
complete lack
She
of
said-
data.
She said 5.
3 to 5.
What?
3 to 5.
Last year.
3 to
Last
5
year.
times a year?
Yeah.
It's very rarely used.
That's all. 3 to 5
Correct.
times a year.
Yeah.
Okay. Remove
Yeah.
services. That's an easy call.
Yeah, Terry
Okay.
Terry said that most people didn't even know about it, so it's like, okay.
Well, now everyone's gonna know about it.
Everyone who watches.
The 8, I mean, we got.
Are they going to crash before
All
August
7 of them
31st
watching.
or whenever? What is it? October
Thank you,
1?
Terry.
Uh-oh. I better not hear the word.
You know how I
Don't
feel.
say that
you know,
word.
You know how I
It's
feel.
written
about
on there.
fees. Dang it.
Soccer.
No, you know what he's talking about. It's about soccer.
The S word.
Those are the fields that people used to take the dogs to, or the soccer field. Good evening, Mayor and Council. I want to talk to you about the fees today. These fees have been seen by our Parks Commission and FAB, and debated at both, discussed at both. So the Green Red Barn, since I've been here 5 years now, we have not increased the cost at the Green Red Barn. That's partly because once I got here, we did a study and found out there was some structural stuff that we needed to fix. Then COVID happened, and so we've just gotten that up and running. And
Great improvements. Great improvements.
CIP did a great job with that. But we do think there should be additional charge for the Green Red Barn. In the past, we brought to y'all something that non-resident fees would be 50% more, and Green Red Barn was specifically called out at 100% more. So right now, that would be a $500 resident fee and a $1,000 non-resident fee for the Green Red Barn.
How often we have non-residents?
Very rarely if they have a friend that's a resident,
3 to 5 times
if I'm honest.
Those are competing good.
Your
answers.
resident fees, what? I'll call you back. And we don't have a deposit in the past, and so we've had folks. We've had folks that could tack things to walls, and we'd have to take it down, but there was no way to really charge them other than make a note to never rent to them again. So, adding a deposit fee. Gillen Creek has been under construction as well for quite a long time, so we have not increased that rental fee. That facility's opened back up, so a 2-hour rental fee for Gillen Creek and Mincer are increasing. Those facilities were sold out by middle of June.
Does Gillian Creek's fee get us back in the black on that? Because I was going to say, you have made, I mean, that is phenomenal. That is a great facility.
Nothing will get you in the black at an aquatic facility, unfortunately.
No.
But
How close are we getting with that fee?
I mean, I don't know right now. I think our aquatic cost recovery numbers in the 30%.
Okay.
They're a loss leader for everyone. You're providing them because of the other, the ancillary benefits
That come with it?
Yeah. The Finning Field has been getting culture improvements as far as mowing improvements as well, horticulture improvements. So we're upping that. It's been a very popular facility.
Is that enough?
That's what I was going to ask. Because Rudy always says every year we're cheap on it.
I mean,
it's the field that it is getting horticulture improvements, but it gets it quarterly as compared to Wells Point and 1849 gets them monthly. So we think it's fair at the rate. Wells Point, we would see a peak, non-peak, which we're using at 1849 to great success. We used to have a Bluetooth lock, and people would forget it and leave it attached to something that would lock overnight and not lock the facility. So we've gotten rid of the Bluetooth lock, and we're just having a lock fee. And if you don't lock your gate up at night, you have the right to be charged a fee. And that is just to make sure. 2 years ago in Leander, a facility there didn't have someone properly lock it, and folks got out there in their ATVs and tore it up. And that field was offline for like 6 weeks. And that doesn't just impact that group that uses it; it impacts the other groups we rent that out to as well. So this fee just helps us make sure people, when they leave, they lock it up, and then it's available for the next group.
For what it's worth, that's a great fee for the Green Red Barn. I recently learned there's a restaurant in town that took over an event space that used to be next door to them. And I just found out that they rent that space out for $500 for 4 hours. So for $500 for all day,
and they pay it,
is a phenomenal rate for our residents.
And you know how that space.
Half court basketball court, we're upping it from 50 to 60 for a rental. That's in the rec center. That's not our outdoor basketball facilities are just first come first serve.
Shane, can you go back to, I didn't see 1849.
Wasn't on.
Oh, it wasn't? Okay.
Yeah, so I can't trust this.
How many times are we renting the Green Red Barn out to non-residents a year?
I would have to pull those numbers, but what normally happens if you call and you're a non-resident and you know someone in town that's a resident, you call and say, hey, my son's got a wedding or a birthday party, can I rent this under you? And it's mostly resident rentals.
So,
But that resident is on hook for whatever happens in that moment, so they do bear some responsibility for that rental. You better be a good friend.
I'm just wondering if there's a practical advantage to having a non-resident fee there.
At least they have to know somebody,
Yeah, you're at least still
right?
connected.
At least
to
you're
the-
one degree, 7 degrees from Kevin Bacon, at least you're 1 degree from a resident of Pflugerville.
I love
So, resident
Okay.
city limits?
Yeah, what we
That's
call a
why
tax
you
break.
have to have non-resident, because you will have the,
TJ.
which is, yeah, I think it's great that you have that.
How many times in the last year has a non-resident rented the?
Well, the Green Red Barn just opened back up.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do we
Couple
have
months
any
ago.
historical data on non-residents?
I don't, not with me.
You're just trying to spook them.
Yeah, since early 2020, it's been closed until late this last year.
And
Due to
it's-
COVID and then the repairs.
And the repairs, it's great. It really, okay. Well, it's if they rent it out. I was thinking that people use it for the, everything else going on there. Okay.
I mean, I think David may be wondering now if he can rent it out for
Oh,
the
make more
next
friends.
10 weeks at $500 a day and then charge his friends $1,000 a day or $2,000.
Just meet them in the middle, charge them $750.
Yeah, charge them $750. They get a deal. I get a deal.
Our day
Win-win.
passes, our day passes right now are $2. We're going to keep that for youth, but we're going to ask a little bit more out of the adults. Our senior luncheon that's non-catered, that's essentially a potluck, which isn't allowed by Austin Public Health and public facilities anymore, so we're just removing that. Gillen Creek Pool and Windermere Pool would see an increase in their adult admission, and we're clearly defining adults, so seniors would be at 55.
Just to be clear, the reason why you moved the senior lunch catered is non-catered is because that's explicitly not related under our current contract with Austin Public Health, correct?
I would like to be clear. That's actually, it's violation of state law. That's not just,
Okay,
it's Austin
so
Public
state,
Health.
not
That's,
Austin
that's
Public Health.
health code.
Potluck
Implementation of
facilities.
state law via health authority.
Potluck facilities are limited to member only, so like a church. can
It's just a
put on potluck,
public
but-
space.
Can you back up one slide just real quick?
You want to see the soccer fields again?
Yes, because why are we paying more? Why are we charging more for basketball than we are for soccer? Well, air conditioning is a lot, but I mean, there's a lot to maintain that grass and everything
I think
else.
the basketball court's $60 an hour.
Yeah, it was the next slide, I guess. 60,
Oh.
70,
Yeah, go.
Yeah, and the soccer fields are 10 or 20.
Yeah, just because that's just the rate that we're seeing out in the.
Yeah, you pay.
Is that based on cost recovery of
You just
basketball
want to charge
courts?
Rudy more?
No,
No, I think
but
that's
still,
rates
it's
of
like
what's going on at
a lot of
Round Rock and some of the other
That's in the
facilities.
street. Now that I've become a volleyball dad, Lord God help me. Yeah, that's what you see. I mean, it's interesting to see, and it literally is because we're inside and we got air conditioning.
So
Insane.
I'm confused. I heard state law says that potluck can only be a member only. And when I signed up to take yoga classes at the rec center, I had to get a membership. I am a member of the rec center. So does it have to be a private membership or?
We could, I guess, potentially have a potluck only for senior members, but anyone.
Right, that's what I'm saying.
No, I have other reason that I'd be happy to, I can't recommend potlucks in a public facility when we've had allergy issues happen at the rec center, and I strongly recommend not having it.
Those are better reasons.
Those are
why.
better reasons than getting my dander up to fight state law.
I don't know where they cook this food. I just,
Yeah.
I don't support it.
Let's say the senior Fluger Club was going to be interesting.
It'll only go forward.
I'll go through. Okay. I think we covered that page, and then
Yeah, I like your.
we are working on some individual passes for the pools. We had some folks reach out and say, Typhoon has individual passes that are like seasonal, so we're adding an option for that as well. And then the event land permit use, we want to make sure when we're doing that, we're working in some sort of way that we can bring that back to council based on space. So if Fear is renting a space or We have a folk festival that wants to rent a whole park. That's something that we're using a licensing agreement. We're coming back with y'all to have a discussion about
When will that come back? Okay. My only
that we're hoping to talk about it at the lunch and learn.
The lunch and learn. Monday.
okay.
We're gonna,
And the only reason I bring that up is because we're about to enter tournament season, so we want to start collecting some of that stuff. Let's do it.
And this is just for spaces that don't have fees attached. If someone comes and says, I want to rent all of Fluker Park, I don't have a way to do that. I could rent you the gazebo, but I can't rent you the whole park. And so, and to be quite honest, that's a discussion.
Has that
it
happened?
should include, well, we've turned people down that have wanted to rent the park in the past. We had a folk festival that wanted to rent it.
so we'll talk about license agreements, but really what comes into play is that you're not allowing the public to use a publicly owned park. If, for example, somebody says, I want to do a jazz festival, but city, I don't want you involved in it, I'm going to charge $15 a head. It's council's authority to make the decision to say, then the public is not allowed into their park, and you would use license agreements. There's pros and cons to it.
And the only reason I think about that with your analogy is, no, I don't want to have this conversation public. I'll tell you offline.
So lots of pros and cons, and we'd be happy to hear y'all's policy on it.
Yeah, okay.
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah, I definitely would like to hear when people want to make that pitch.
Sure. Well, right now, I
Bring
wouldn't
that
even
to
have a fee to
council.
charge them. So, yeah, it would have been free. So, and then the Adopt-A program, it's been free in the past. It comes with a sign. It comes with pickers quarterly. So it's just something that recovers some of that cost. It also puts a little bit more skin in the game for the folks that are getting the opportunity to clean up the trail.
Do we have trails that people adopt and then don't do anything? Just looking to have their name
We
out
have
there?
less frequent groups and more frequent groups. We're trying really hard when we're not seeing it done quarterly to reach out to them and make sure, hey, this is part of what's required. But yeah, we have some of the trails that are a lot more active, and we have trails that are less active.
So we don't have an opportunity for people to adopt and then outsource it to other people.
No, not.
I mean, I'm telling you.
I think that's all.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Shane.
Thank you, Mayor, Council, and City Manager. Robin Meek, Assistant Director of Development Engineering. I'm going to go through the proposed fee amendments that we have. This is the development agreement fee. So I actually evaluated all the cities in our surrounding area. I've got notes on it. This fee really is just getting at all the time that's spent from our staff on that. There's probably close to 10 staff members that are involved in development agreement negotiations. That includes directors, city managers, and kind of all the way down to.
Is this the median, or is this high, low? Where is this?
Pretty much median. City of Austin and Dripping Springs were actually some of the highest. City of Austin's around 11,000, close to 12,000, and Dripping Springs is 5,000, but they actually charge their consultants' time at 125%. And so basically, every staff member, attorney, engineers, everyone's getting charged at 110%, 125%. So they recoup all of their costs, and that fee is just kept.
And that's Dripping Springs proper, not none of the mud districts.
Well, development agreements would be ETJ as well, so it would be both.
Because their ETJ's
close to
disproportionately, yeah, yeah, it's insane.
So staff is proposing, these are the two amendments that are being made. Basically, there would be requirements to re-escrow funds. Today, we have escrows required for legal only, but I think more staff time is spent in excess of the current fee amounts. And I would note that a lot of our development agreements are development agreement amendments, so they're actually only paying $1,500. So most of the east side of town is already in agreement, so we're doing amendments. And those agreements, I would say, take more than 6 months usually. There's a lot of staff time, usually meetings every other week, with at least 5 staff members in those. So we think this is a fair increase that will actually get at what Serena was talking about in, the developers paying for the cost of the request. And this is actually structured after how the fee is structured in Georgetown. I had never seen it done this way before when a city actually had legal counsel in-house. But that's where the language sort of came from and was mimicked after.
Interesting.
These are the fees that are proposed for development, engineering, construction plans. The utility extension, so basically last legislative session, we were not allowed to any longer use valuation-based fees. So our public improvement plans were evaluation-based fee.
Can you explain that for the public?
So basically, we would have a plan review fee that was $500, and then at the time of construction, they were required to pay 3.5% of the total cost of public improvements. When that bill passed, cities were only allowed to charge the exact amount that the city accrued for the plan review and for the inspection itself. So the way the fee was structured previously, like I said, it was $500 and then 3.5%. That bill went into effect pretty quickly, and I think we had to change the fee structure September 1. We did evaluate it last year, but one thing we saw other cities do that we did not do last year is they accounted for all of the plan review time and all of the inspection time. So that's how we recalculated it. I worked with our development engineering manager in order to recalculate how we were structuring it, and this is what we find to be consistent with what how much money is being spent on those reviews.
So, so it's one of the few times where I get where the legislature's coming on, because I mean, it's true. Your service should be denote a specific amount for it, because you know how valuable the service is for people. But obviously, they want you to get more, none of the details regarding that. So, I think
So it allows, for us, we have in-house inspectors. The other way is if you have third-party inspectors, then you're allowed to charge that exact cost.
Oh.
So with ours being in-house, we, took an average plus a percentage of their salary and then accommodated for the different types of permits, which is why you see the utility connection only. We have some residents who are on septic that tie into sewer and things like that. We didn't want them to be actually bearing the full cost of these permits. And we see that with different things, mostly downtown, not septic systems, but small utility tie-ins. And so this is the same thing. It's just we're going from those were the reviews and these are the inspections.
Cool.
The other new fee is that service extension request. That is a fee that we have implemented because basically we'll get developers that haven't submitted an application, but they want to know what the capacity is for wastewater. We spend money with our third party, Freeze and Nichols, and sometimes those developments don't come to fruition. And so in this case, if they want us to do those evaluations, then we just ensure that they're paying the actual cost of it. And there's minimal permit fee in addition to that.
Only $250?
I'll defer to Brandon.
Interesting.
The bulk of it is us just passing things along to our consultant, and then once the consultant takes it, then they would be required to pay everything that's charged by the consultant.
I just see
there's not much staff time.
In fast-growing communities like ours, oftentimes you will get people who are either developers or owners of businesses who are trying to figure out what their 5-year plan, 3-year plan, how to do things, and they'll come asking for this to try to see how that actually does utilities together. So I don't think 250 is bad at all for something like this.
Definitely not.
Okay. Thanks. Yeah.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. So a lot of these, you're going to wonder what the words are, and that's totally okay. I'll do my best to explain them to you.
Carbonaceous.
How dare you? How dare you, Brent? How dare you?
So all of these fees are updates to our industrial pretreatment program. So as a reminder of what the industrial pretreatment and fog program is, that it impacts in categorical industrial users. So think of industries that have very high strength wastewater. So they have heavy metals, they have high demand that is not, our wastewater treatment plant is not designed to treat. So they pay a surcharge based upon their high strength wastewater. So these fees are updates. We have to do those through a third party accredited lab. All of these samples, whether that is biochemical oxygen demand, total suspended solids, all the way down, these have to be done through a NELAC accredited lab. Those are at cost of what the cost is to do those samples, and the resample fee is recovering costs for us having to resample when a permitted entity requests a resample. So we are required to sample them every year based upon what their industry is, but if they request a resample, this is their cost that they have to pay for those. And there's about 2 or 3 slides of just industrial pretreatment.
Yep.
Okay, perfect. So same thing, when we do an industrial pretreatment permit or any kind of fats, oils, and grease type permit for a food service establishment, these are all at cost based upon a third party lab. I'm happy to talk about each one of these if y'all would like to know what barium and chromium and any of these are. But
what's chromium?
Can you do that one?
Chromium is
at the bottom.
chromium or molybdenum.
That one.
It's a
That's
metal.
what I hear.
It's a heavy metal. So when you get into heavy metals, we have to test for these. We have to know the concentration because their fee is based upon the quantity and the how high that level is. So so each one of these are part of their heavy metal sampling. Some of these have to be handled by a subcontractor based upon what they are. So there's a subcontracted handling fee that we have to pay. And then when we keep going further into industrial pretreatment, we actually stop at digested metals. So these are all subcontracted industrial pretreatment costs, all the way down to those. So when we get into a trip fee, so if you are requesting a side trip for someone to come out right away, there's a trip charge for a tech or a service tech to come out to your house to resolve something right away, right? So there's obviously a cost to that recover our costs when we have to stop what we're doing and move staff over to wherever they need to be. There's also what's called an easement encroachment fee. This is a new fee. So when we have people or developers or any type of future development that wants to cross into our easements, so we have a lot of easements. We have a lot of water and wastewater easements. We have a 15-mile raw water line easement that a lot of people want to cross. So in order to cross that, we have to do an agreement, which I brought a couple to y'all for easement encroachments. That involves staff time, engineering costs for us to review that, as well as legal costs to review those encroachment agreements. So this is in order to capture those costs and recoup those when either a developer or someone wants to encroach in our easement.
And this is not one of those things where the legislature said, no, you've got to tell us exactly how many hours and what the billable rate is for each individual. That's easement encroachment is something the legislature has left us some discretion on.
This is our own easement, so they're encroaching into our property our subsurface property that we own. So we're saying, hey, if you're going to encroach into our easement, no different than if someone wanted to cross into your property, right? That we own the subsurface rights to this easement, so therefore we have to be able to say, hey, we allow you to cross into our easement that we've purchased, right? So we have purchased into this, and we approve of where you're at, higher or lower, wherever you're at on that.
Okay.
So for the construction fire hydrant, so this is a fire hydrant meter. This is updated to reflect true cost. We have AMI fire hydrant meters, so that way it goes up to the AMI portal. So this is updated to reflect that cost of what those fire hydrant meters are. And we're also updating the cost of the volume charge for bulk water. Bulk water is construction water. So if you see a fire hydrant meter, this is $12.50 per thousand. So this is transient usage. It's not the same as what you would see for a residential or commercial entity. These are transient usage based upon how much water they use on and off throughout the year.
That's it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thank y'all.
Thank you very much. Was that the end?
So over the next 3 weeks, Tracy and her team will be working to polish up the actual budget document, and that'll be delivered to you by August 1st.
Okay.
So if you have any feedback as a result of this meeting, please let Serena know, and we'll try to act accordingly.
Will do.
Lots of feedback.
Thank you, James.
Lots.
Tracer. Appreciate it. Our next item is executive session deliberations in accordance with section 551.071 and 551.087 of the Texas Government Code to discuss economic development negotiations, financial information received from businesses expanding or relocating in the city of Pflugerville, and to seek legal advice regarding such projects, incentives, and negotiations for Project Top Floor. We are in executive session.
Are we gonna take a break or not?
You want to go pick?
I gotta change in my Shane shirt.
You got 5 minutes.
And we have time to do Thomas and James' birthday today, so they're my rider bag. Yep. We don't actually work, Doug.
We're back from executive session. No action was taken. The work session is adjourned.
Good job.